Let's go ahead and get started. Sure folks can catch up pretty easily with what we're talking about today. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Will White. I'm a consulting systems engineer at Appspace. And today we're going to be talking about using Appspace to reach your remote team. So why are we talking about this? That's probably pretty obvious to everyone. And actually, before we really jump into it, I do want to remind everybody, I think you're all on mute by default, but if not, make sure to mute your mics while we go through the presentation. Also pretty sure everybody's familiar with how that works these days. And then also there is a Q&A section. So if you have any questions that we run through, feel free to drop those in that Q&A chat. We'll address those after the presentation and the demo. So let's jump right back to it. Obviously, we've got a lot of challenges these days with communication, especially in light of COVID-19 and how that's changed the way we work, at least for the near future. It's caused a lot of problems, right? How do I keep communicating with my employees, with my colleagues, with my team, despite the fact that we are all remote? All of us have been coping with this situation, right? It's led to a lot of different feelings of team separation, of disconnect, and also honestly just unsureness of how to best communicate with your team, right? How to keep up the cadence that you had previously when you can't see face to face, when you can't get an easy kind of checkup, and when the content you were publishing previously in an actual office space is no longer readily available. Further, when we're all remote, it's important to make sure your message is actually getting through. It's hard to know that it is these days, right? You want to make sure that your messaging is consistent, whereas you know for a fact if people are coming in the office every day, it is, versus now, well, that's another challenge. All of this really just ties into a lack of normalcy, right? Things have definitely changed, and our platform is looking to help you adopt or adapt to that via a few tools that we've put out. So let's go ahead and jump into the different solutions that Appspace can help with, that we can offer. So first, we can publish to in-home devices. This isn't the main focus of this presentation, but it is something we wanted to touch on. This works just like your standard Appspace publishing in the office environment, but of course in a home office. So if you're a remote worker and you're lucky enough to have actual collaboration equipment or screen sharing or video conference equipment, you can publish Appspace to those devices just like you would in the office space. So if you have a Cisco Desk Pro, a RoomKit Mini, a WebEx Share, anything like that in your home office, perhaps a Crestron, Immersive, Airtame, any of those devices, you can publish Appspace to them, the full-fledged app, publish messaging, employee engagement, HR announcements, anything you need to keep those remote workers up to date, you can display on those devices when they're idle. As I mentioned, we won't spend a ton of time on this use case, but I did want to show you an example of it. And if you want more information on that, if you're not familiar with how you actually publish Appspace to those devices, we'll be following up with some additional information, and you can always reach out to your account manager or customer success manager for more information and maybe a little bit of help on getting that up and running. I did want to show you kind of a real-world example of what that might look like. So again, here's one of those lucky employees that has a brand new Cisco Desk Pro sitting on their home desk, and it is delivering actual Appspace content on idle. So you've got full functionality there, cycling through images, cards, videos, all the kind of stuff you might want to deliver. You may also notice next to that Desk Pro, they do have their laptop pulled up to their internal intranet, and we're actually delivering some of that same content there as well, which leads us into the next topic. So this is a feature that we've exposed to all Appspace Cloud customers. It's actually there, ready and waiting for you as soon as you log in. That is the ability to publish a channel out to the web. So instead of the traditional model of publishing to a player device, like a BrightSign, Chromebox, etc., you could publish straight to a URL and basically do what you need to do with that. This could be really useful for publishing to an intranet, so maybe SharePoint, Confluence, things like that, or just to a simple web page if you make your own intranet or want to publish it to any kind of web portal. It also makes it very easy to share the URL via messaging platform. So Slack, Teams, etc., the kind of tools that have become even more important in the current environment. You can send it out via email, via text message, via WhatsApp, right? Any way you communicate with your colleagues, with your employees, this is a useful tool for that. One of the other advantages of it is that there is no authentication required. So you don't have to worry about how am I going to get all of my employees access, all of my colleagues access to this content? Do I need a unique login for the hundreds, thousands of people I want to get this content to now that they're not in a physical office? That's not a concern here, right? You can get that content straight to them. There's no, negotiating with IT, trying to figure out how to make this happen. You can just do it. Now, one thing that we do want to point out is that bandwidth considerations do apply to this. Obviously, if you're publishing to the web and people are loading up that page, right, it's going to consume bandwidth from your Appspace subscription. We do have tools to help you monitor that. So if you log into your account management portal, you can keep track of it. In fact, I'll just show you a quick screenshot here, right? You can see your total bandwidth usage for your account that resets monthly. So you can see kind of how that, in real time, how that might be ticking up as you publish these pages out. Again, typically you're going to be publishing images, cards, things that aren't going to use up a whole lot of bandwidth, but it is something we wanted to point out that you should be aware of. So what I'd like to do now is show you kind of a real world example of that. So earlier I showed you that mock-up with that intranet site. Here it is, right? So we've got kind of our generic intranet with all the information you might be presenting to your fellow coworkers. And then we've embedded an Appspace channel right here in the middle. Thereby giving up-to-date content using the same publishing mechanisms you're probably already familiar with. Makes it very, very easy. One thing I wanted to point out in particular, and we'll actually follow up on this, is that the content we're showing here is all about the FFCR Act. So that's the recent act passed by Congress, all about coronavirus and relief efforts and what employees and employers need to do. At least in the US, as it is a US bill, it is a requirement to get that information out to your employees by April 15th. So we made that very easy. This channel with all of this pertinent information, all the required information, is actually already packaged up and ready to go. So you can easily add that to your account and publish it out just as we have here. So what I'll do next is I'm going to pull up an actual demo account and show you how you would actually go about this. Let me just get logged in real quick. And here we go. So I'm logged into my demo account. I'm going to jump into that same playlist channel we were looking at earlier. So here it is with all of that up-to-date COVID-19 information, just a playlist of cards cycling through. One thing I'll point out is that publishing to web in this manner is handled the exact same way as every other type of publishing in Appspace. Just simple channels, content management, scheduling, all of that applies just as it normally does. What I'm going to do real quick is just add a piece of content here just to show you that update. So I'm going to click add to my channel. I've got a demo card before, or that I created before. I'll go ahead and drop that in, and we'll see that update shortly on those live examples I showed you. Now, another thing that we did want to point out about this publish to web feature is that it does have a couple of minutes of lag time, right? So I just added the card, and that should update on that publish to web option here within a minute or two. It is not an instantaneous update. Just like with our player devices, there is a sync cycle. The reason we wanted to point that out is that this is a great feature to get routine kind of information out to your employees. Obviously, the update will happen pretty quickly, so you can have pretty timely information, but it's not something we necessarily recommend for emergency alerts, that kind of thing. Unlike our full-fledged app running on full-fledged digital signage devices where we have a lot more control to push direct updates down and do those instantaneous screen takeovers, that's not quite the case here. So both on the back end and also just the way web browsers work, the way that they detect changes, refresh, and so on, there is that few minutes of lag time after you make an update. So again, just wanted to make sure that's clear. So once you've created your channel, you've added your content, maybe you've got an existing channel of content you're already publishing in a physical office that no one's currently seeing, how do you actually publish it to web? Well, we made that super easy. So right here in the channel, just as you always would, you could go up here to the Publish tab, and you'll actually see a new option here. In fact, if you're eagle-eyed and have been updating content in Appspace, you might have already seen it. So you can see my channel is actually published to no player devices, no collaboration devices, published to no users, but it is published to web. So you'll see it marked as on there. Channels by default are not published to web. It'll show off, and it'll just have a big blue button in the middle to enable that publishing. Once you do, it's going to give you two links. So there is just a direct link to the content. If you click that, it'll open up in a new tab, and you can preview your channel right away. That's great for some of those aforementioned direct communication methods. So sending via email, via text, via Slack, via Teams, etc. In fact, you can see there's that extra card that I just added to my playlist. So quick update. The second option is it does give you fully developed embed code. So if you do want to throw that into an intranet site, like we did back here, it works perfectly for that. And again, there's that update. So we make it very easy to just drop that into SharePoint or whatever other internet service you're using and show that where you need to show it. If you ever needed to stop publishing, you obviously have that option. You can toggle it back and forth just like any other type of publishing in Appspace. So with that, that's really it. Demo's pretty quick. It's an easy publishing method. Some of you guys, I like to mention, might actually recognize this from in the past. We had something we called a public URL. But as I said, we've made this much more accessible, a much quicker publishing method to do so, and we've opened it up to all channel types. So simple playlist channels, the kind that we see the biggest adoption of, you can use this method as well. I'm going to pull up the chat and the Q&A to see what questions we might have. We can touch on that before we talk about kind of next steps and some of the resources that are available. So can you publish to a private YouTube page? I do see that chat. People who don't know how to create a web page. You can't publish directly to YouTube. Now you could pull in YouTube content to your channel and actually make that part of what you're publishing via Appspace, but currently we couldn't publish via YouTube, if that makes sense. We're always looking at ways to expand this feature to make it more and more flexible. In fact, we got this out quickly because of the circumstances. We wanted to get this to everyone as quickly as possible, but we're always looking for ways to expand upon it. So that's great feedback. Let me pull up the actual Q&A panel here. So is there a way to publish the channel to a WebEx meeting, like before a meeting starts? Not currently. You could share your screen like I'm doing, easily display that. We have a very close relationship with Cisco, so we're also looking at other ways to integrate that. Obviously, they're evaluating different ways they can expand their WebEx platform to address some of the challenges we're facing. So good feedback there. Can we embed this into a Jive page? Really, any of those kind of services that allow you to pull in either embed code or a straight URL should work just fine. Our platform's entirely HTML5 based. There's nothing kind of tricky or unusual about it. So any of those platforms should be able to pull in our publish link. Next question here, are there any additional charges for publish to web? Not for the feature itself. We flipped that switch. It's already available. So you can publish any existing or new channel you make to the web right away. The only consideration, as I mentioned earlier, are those bandwidth limitations. So that's something to keep your eye on if you're publishing video playlists to the web, right? And people are sitting there streaming it all day. That could eat up a lot of bandwidth. If you go way over your limit, then yeah, we'd have to look to charge for that. One thing I do want to note is that in addition to your Appspace subscription, we do offer what we call resource packs, which are basically big chunks of storage and bandwidth you can buy ahead of time. And of course, that's a cheaper way to go about it. So if you do think you're going to be blasting out a ton of content, especially again, like video content, things like that, that's going to eat up a lot of bandwidth, you could actually grab one of those resource packs ahead of time. You can always talk to your account manager about that. So will the URL link be publicly accessible to anyone with the link and an internet connection, or are there other requirements? That's a good question. There's no authentication required for this particular method. So it's kind of like the, I don't know if you're familiar with like Google G Suite, right? Share via the link. It's kind of that same idea. So there's no authentication required. It makes it really easy to just get this content out there. Just as a bit of a teaser, we've got a lot of other kind of remote communication tools coming down the pipeline that will actually be released pretty soon that do allow for more of an authenticated method to make sure that only certain people access certain content and so on. So I'm sure we'll have more webinars about that here very shortly. But this particular method is just an unauthenticated direct link just for ease of use and ease of sharing. Another question, can you share this in Microsoft Teams? Certainly, as far as the actual publish to web, you can certainly share that via Microsoft Teams. And to go back to the earlier topic, that's actually also an upcoming feature that I can kind of preview here. Again, I know we'll have more webinars, we'll have more materials coming out on that soon, but the ability to publish directly into collaboration apps, not just share a publish to web link, but literally publish Appspace content straight to them is actually an EFT right now. So also right around the corner. So how can I sync my devices at the same time? A couple of different answers to that. So when you make an update to a channel that's published to the web, that update will take a few moments to take effect, excuse me, but then that'll happen across the board. So everybody will see that update as soon as it is made, because it is a live updating page. Just in case you're kind of going this direction, if you're talking about more traditional digital signage, because most of us are still working on what's deployed in our office, because we'll be back there someday, we actually can sync content between digital signs. That's a feature that we call network sync. So if you're interested in that, we can always dig into it. You can reach out again to your CSM, our support team, your account manager, and we can get you more information on that. Workplace by Facebook also came up. We're evaluating that. I mentioned we're looking at different collaboration and tools that we can tie into. That's not right on the immediate roadmap, but it's being evaluated, and that kind of feedback is always valuable. In fact, I'll pause real quick from the Q&A just to mention that once this webinar ends, there actually will be a link to a survey. In fact, you'll get a little redirect link just taking you to our Google Form survey. And we'd love to get your feedback on that, not just about this webinar, but about features and integrations you'd like to see. Obviously, we want to be as helpful to you guys, to all of our customers as we can in this kind of unusual environment. So any kind of ask, feedback, wouldn't it be great if we could do blank? We'd love to have that because we're really basing our current roadmap and our priorities on what you all actually need to keep this kind of communication flowing. Can this be used to display the message to customers that we are available for virtual demos? Sure, yeah. I mean, you can, any kind of content, we actually do a lot of that ourselves. We've actually reworked our demo. In fact, let me jump back here real quick. This kind of little view here of the desk, this is actually a tiny little snippet of a full immersive demo that we've developed. And we're actually going to be having more information on that soon as well. So you can expect to follow up there. But if you want to see a full kind of A to Z demo of everything Appspace can do presented virtually like this, we have the capability as well. I hope I'm not missing anything. If I do, we can always follow up. Got a lot of questions here. Private Facebook page posting, it should work just the same as long as it can reach that embed code since that's going out to our public cloud. Should be no problem there. Screensavers, that is something we've talked about. I think a few people have asked about that, about using this kind of virtual channel, something like this, as a screensaver. If you have the capability to use a URL as a screensaver, great, work out of the box, right? No real integration there needed. You could just grab that publish to web URL, use that as a screensaver. In terms of deeper integration, like OS level integration, again, that's something that our product team is talking about. We'd love to get that feedback about how useful that would be for remote and in-office employees once we get back to normal. So again, please leave that feedback in the feedback form, and I'll take that back to our product team as well, since it looks like that's a pretty popular ask. Looks like, is there a way to manually click through the playlist? So in this publish to web option, no. Now this is designed to basically mimic traditional signage, traditional ambient kind of communication, the same stuff you'd see up on a digital sign or a collaboration display. So it is kind of presented as is, great for just passive information delivery. Now, earlier I mentioned some of those upcoming features that allow for maybe authentication, for targeting, things like that. That will allow you a complete on-demand experience. Just to tease that, we're calling that Appspace Connect. You'll see a lot more about that here in the next few days and weeks. But that allows a user to navigate maybe between different channels, channel groups, different content, back and forth between content, have that complete control for a more on-demand experience. Can we create an Appspace app that will run on the desktop like in the corner of their screen and maybe push to screensaver? So yeah, screensavers, definitely got that feedback. As far as the corner of the screen, we do have an Appspace app for Windows, for Mac OS, kind of basic desktop OSs. We can always run it. We don't have the OS level control to like always in the corner, but you could always get that set up via Windows domain policy or things like that. So we can always evaluate that. And again, I'm happy to take that feedback to our product team. Let me see. Question about bandwidth consumption, optimizing, reducing that bandwidth usage. That is something we're looking at too. That's why we wanted to make sure to highlight that. Obviously, if every single employee is pulling it up and viewing it multiple times a day, that can be quite a bit of bandwidth usage, especially if their browser's not caching that content. Most of them will, but you never know. We are looking at optimizations for that. So for example, we've implemented a lot of controls on streaming endpoint devices. So streaming signage devices, streaming collaboration displays that we call low bandwidth mode. So we're looking at ways to possibly implement that for this as well. If you want to ensure that we are just limiting to more static content, maybe removing some of the more complex elements from the cards to lower bandwidth usage, some different options along those lines. Of course, we'll keep you posted on that. A lot of things published to Microsoft Teams, published to Workplace by Facebook, some of those same kind of themes. Definitely as far as publishing the embed code of the URL, you certainly can. And like I said, we've got deeper integration with a lot of those communication platforms coming here very shortly. SSO login to the URL, another question about authentication. That new connect feature will certainly allow that and will certainly allow you to use your own SSO. Whereas again, this is more that direct link where if they have the link, they can view it. The channel will be read by a screen reader. I'll have to check with our product team on that. Now, it's my understanding it's all just standard HTML5, so it'd be pretty easy to tag, but I'll take that as feedback to see if that's possible. Don't want to overpromise before checking with them, but I don't see any reason why not. Will you be sending out information on how this works after the meeting? Absolutely. So that's one thing I wanted to make sure we covered before we get to the bottom of the hour at the end of the webinar. In addition to that survey, where again, we'd love your feedback on this webinar and very much your feedback on what would be useful to you guys. We'll be sending out some follow-up information. So information on how to use publish to web, how it actually works, probably some information as well about some kind of upcoming features, things you can expect from us. And we'll also send information about some of these pre-made channels. In fact, I actually pulled it up right now. So some of those legally required messages that you have to put in front of your employees, some other COVID-19 updates, things like that. We've made that available too, so we'll be including links to those in case you would find that content useful. So how long does it generally take for content to show in the web link? Usually a few minutes. So when you very first publish a channel, it'll give you those URLs, and if you click on it right away, it's actually going to pop up with the general message saying that the actual publish to web option is still being generated. That kind of initialization of the publish to web feature usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes because we're getting that all set up on the back end in our cloud servers. Once that's done, the live updates, so say you add a card, change scheduling, something like that, that's usually about two minutes, give or take. Sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit longer, just depending on how many updates you're making, but that's going to be pretty quick. Can you control who has the ability to turn on that publish for web option? Absolutely. It's only going to be users that have actual publishing rights. So if you've got your low-level users that are just managing content, they won't have that ability to turn that on and off. It's only actual content administrators, of course, account admins, people at that higher level that are going to have that ability. Let's see. Can I target a device with a particular message? You can certainly publish different channels for different content. That's typically what we see, right? Maybe an HR channel, an employee engagement channel, a work from home channel, any of those kind of things, right? Different content published in different ways to different endpoints, to different Slack channels or Teams channels or whatever. Pretty common, same kind of publishing mechanism as normal signage. I see a question here, how to upload a video. That's just done via the content library. They get back into a little bit of basic Appspace functionality, but that's all found in our Knowledge Center. You really just click Add. There's an option to upload a local file, and just like attaching to an email, you can drag or drop that video or browse for it, upload it, and add it straight to your channel. So it's hopefully super easy. How do the playlist settings work via web link? It's exactly the same. So if you're in your channel, if I go back here and I want to change some of these settings, maybe change scheduling or duration or any of that kind of thing, that's going to take effect on the publish to web as well. It's going to replicate it just like it was a good old-fashioned digital sign, right? So if you schedule content to only show next month, it'll only show in that web link next month. Another question about the bandwidth usage meter. So that's in your account portal. That is account.appspace.com. And not to volunteer my colleague Emily, but maybe we can include a little bit of information about that as well in our follow-up, just to make that easy to find. But we actually do have a really helpful article. Maybe this is what we'll send out. Again, just volunteering everything's here. We do have a really helpful article about managing bandwidth in Appspace and kind of best practices, how to calculate bandwidth usage. So hopefully that'll be useful for everyone. So yeah, we do have an app for Windows. There's a question about that. We have an app for Mac OS as well. That'd be in the download section. And of course, you could also just publish via web, which would work in any kind of modern web browser, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, etc. There's a question about assigning this web channel to devices or users. You can publish this just the way you always did. So for example, my channel here, I can publish it to web, but I could also publish it to devices and users just like before. There's no distinction there. You don't have to have web-only channels. You can use the same content today that you would be publishing in break rooms and hallways and wherever else. You can publish that straight to your users via the web right now. And in fact, I'll show you in a different channel here. This one actually isn't published to web, so you'll see it's off. And again, it just gives you that button. I think that's a lot of the QA. I apologize if I missed something. I know we're right at the bottom of the hour. I do see one last question about COVID cards for the UK. We actually have a team in the UK, so we'll follow up on that internally. That's a good idea. So it's not just the US channels. We'll see if they have anything whipped up for you guys. Otherwise, like I said, once the webinar ends, it's going to redirect you to a survey. It'll tell you it's redirecting to our Google Sheets. So click through that, it'll pull up the survey. If you could leave feedback, that'd be absolutely fantastic. If you have any questions, any follow-up, we're actually going to do another one of these webinars on Monday on the same topic. But of course, you can always reach out directly to us with any kind of questions, and your account manager, your customer success manager will be happy to help you out, give you all the information you need on this new feature. And then, of course, we'll also keep you posted on some of those other features that I teased that are coming down the pipeline. I think that's it for me. I know we're right at the bottom of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. Hopefully, I got to a lot of questions. Hopefully, that was helpful. But like I said, don't be strangers about reaching out with any additional questions if you need more info. Thanks, everybody.